What's up?
Yo, ladies and gentlemen, we got a very, very special episode of the House Divided podcast. We got the one and only Ty Hayes, the college football aficionado. The man knows everything and anything about college football. So glad to have you, Ty. Of course, we got Brandon Hill. I'm Corey Hilliard. If you've been here before, you know what it is. If it's your first time, me Casa Sukasa, B Hill, let's talk about it.
Hey, guys, just hop down there. Just do 4 things for me. Tap the subscribe button. Tap that notification bell while you're at it. It's real easy. Just a smooth click right over to the right. Also, while you're at it, if you like what you're seeing, you like what you're hearing, tap the thumbs up button as well. That's going to help us with the algorithm, get us out there on those platforms. And last but not least, we want to hear from y'all. Hop down there in those comments. Good, bad, right, wrong, indifferent. We don't care one way or another. So, we brought our guy Ty on here tonight. Ty, tell the people where you're from, where they can see your content, everything.
Man, thank y'all for having me on. Always fun to get to come out of my own little show region and get to go on all these shows. It's always a good time talking to you too. But y'all can find me at Around the Table Sports. I just talk college football.
Absolutely. So we were going to hop in it today, Corey. If you want to pop it up on the screen right now for us, we were going to hop into these top 75 quarterbacks that ESPN had listed. We're also going to be talking about a little bit more college football, everything else. So to start it off, though, we got these top 75. Corey, let's go ahead. Scroll to the top 10. Top 10, because that's really what the people want to hear about. They don't want to hear about the 75, all of them. We'll get into it, but top 10 is where we're going to start.
You don't want to talk about Brandon Whedon at number 71?
We'll get to that. We'll get to it.
As long as we can talk about Eric Crouch, I'll be happy.
Absolutely.
All right, B. Start us off, number 10.
Man, number 10 right now, when we're looking at this thing at number 10, hang on, let me get scrolled up here. Robert Griffin III. You have him at number 10. You know the guys ahead of him are going to be highly touted, highly talented. 10,366 passing yards. He had a 67% completion rate, 78 touchdowns to only 17 interceptions. And on top of that, he could get it done on the ground. He had 2,200 yards rushing and 33 rushing touchdowns. This guy, Robert Griffin III, he literally won the Heisman that year when he beat my beloved Sooners.
Yeah.
So, this one kind of strikes a little bit of a nerve for me, but the dude was an absolute baller to make the top 10. Go ahead, Ty.
It's one of these things, man, where I think that one of the most interesting things about this list is there's so many different ways to look at it. So when we get into the top 3, I'll really break down what I'm talking about. But one of the ways I think you can look at this is just impact to the game. And I know that there are going to be some people out there that hear what I'm about to say and they'll roll their eyes. And granted, I hear you, but we all grew up with the NCAA football game, right?
Right.
Growing up, the college football game, people were as excited for that as the NFL games. Personally, I was more excited. But the reason why I bring that up, guys, Baylor went from being a team where you were picking your favorite team when you started your season, when Robert Griffin III hit the scene at Baylor, all of a sudden when you did your creative player, you were trying to be RG3 2.0 going to he influenced a whole generation of players, their style. And I'm not saying he's singularly alone in that, but there are certain players, I'll give you another great one. Pat White with West Virginia. People love to play with West Virginia in the NCAA video game because Pat White was that dude, right? And so you have these guys where they might not come to the forefront of your mind when you're generally thinking of these college football quarterbacks, but their impact of the game was people remember them for what they did. They're excited about them for what they did. And to me, RG3 exemplifies that as well as anybody.
Yeah. I remember him with the armband.
Yeah.
Bro, and Baylor used to be, I always want to say they used to be ass. I don't want to say that. Baylor was, bro, when I was in college, when I played Oklahoma State, Baylor, that was just a game you laughed at. It was them in Kansas. You just knew you were going to beat the the crap out of him. And so he had brought that program from nothing, literally from nothing, bro.
Can we argue that if Robert Griffin III wasn't there, Baylor might not be the program that they are right now nationally? Now, granted, I get it. They've been down a little bit since Art Briles, but you don't have a Robert Griffin III in that mix. We might be looking at Baylor a little bit differently.
No doubt. There is no doubt the impact. One player isn't going to make or break a singular team in a lot of aspects, but there's no question what one player can have in terms of impact for the future of your team. Right. Nick Saban talks about this all the time with Julio Jones and that 2008 recruiting class for Alabama, where he was like, Julio got in the class and took the reins, and like he willed that class together. That's why he said Julio is always the most important prospect to Saban because of that.
I'm still upset with Alabama because we should have gotten him at Oklahoma. We were right there in the mix for things, and Alabama pulled it out.
God, that'd have been – I just can't imagine Julio Jones anywhere else. And I think that's like a Bama fan in me, like blocking out any potential trauma.
Right.
It could occur from him not going to Alabama.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. He was an absolute baller. So Robert Griffin III won a Heisman. This just gets to let you know what the top 10 is looking like here. It's like pretty much if you didn't win a Heisman or you weren't in the contention for the Heisman, you probably didn't make this top 10 list. Going into number 9 here, Marcus Mariota. You want to talk about a guy that changed the atmosphere of his program, started getting him on an uprise. Marcus Mariota is definitely another one of those guys. When you look here, he had over 10,000 passing yards. He could run the ball as well. He was another guy. He had 29 rushing TDs. He had 105 touchdowns to only 14 interceptions in his career. And if I'm not mistaken, Marcus Mariota played about 3 years.
What's more insane is his 2014 season, where total yards, he had 5,224 total yards and 57 touchdowns.
And he didn't win the Heisman.
Ridiculous.
And he didn't win the Heisman. Who did he win the Heisman year? Who won the Heisman that year?
It was
no, he won the Heisman.
He did?
He won the Heisman.
Yeah. Oh, okay. My bad.
Yeah, he won the Heisman. Yeah, he was. But the same thing I just said for Art. How many times you hop on NCAA and hop on Oregon because you wanted to play with
all the time
Marcus Mariota, the Black Mamba out there? Like, you just wanted to get down with not only the uniforms but that team. That team was disgusting.
Chip Kelly was the coach, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chip Kelly, man, that's a special dude. We'll get into all of that whenever we get into our college football talk. Number 8, though, you got Lamar Jackson.
Ooh.
I mean, we just got freaks all up and down this list in the top 10.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson won a Heisman as well. He had over 9,000 passing yards. Now, this is the one right here, rushing yards. The guy was he was like a running back at the quarterback position. He had over 4,000 rushing yards, 50 rushing touchdowns. He held his own in the passing game too, though. He had 69 touchdowns, 27 interceptions. Lamar Jackson was one of those guys. It was like he could have arguably gotten back-to-back MVP or Heisman trophies.
He was a finalist. He was a finalist the next year with Baker and who else? The running back from Stanford, I think.
C-Macker.
Yep, Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey.
And the crazy thing is once again, he went back-to-back seasons where he had 3,500 yards at least through the air and 1,500 yards on the ground. I mean, this dude right here was an absolute cheat code. And you want to talk about highlights. I mean, out of all of the players on the top 10 list, it's tough to say that, like, if you were to say, okay, I need to show somebody what an incredible college football like highlight tape looks like, it's tough not to pick Lamar Jackson because it's ridiculous.
The Florida State game,
that spin move.
Come on, bro, at the goal line.
Oh, it's ridiculous. That dude's ridiculous.
The Syracuse game where he hops over the dude and just walks into the end zone. I mean, there's so many. You're right about that, Ty. There's so many.
Yeah,
many highlights.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? But hey, I'll argue with you though, Ty, on that as far as a cheat code. This next one on the list.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Kyler Murray sitting at number 7 right now. You know what I'm saying? So he had the 1 year at Oklahoma that he got to start, and what did he do? He won the Heisman.
Yep.
And he basically, we're going to get into it, he basically replicated, if not did better than the number 1 guy's numbers in his Heisman year. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, you look at this, he had over 5,400 passing yards. He had a 67% completion rate. And I don't think a lot of people realize how good that is to be 67% completion rate for your career. Also to have 50 touchdowns, only 14 interceptions, but another 1,400 rushing yards and 13 rushing touchdowns. Now, granted, comparing him to like a Lamar Jackson, he wasn't much of a run-first guy. Kyler Murray was one of those guys that would kind of sit back in the pocket. He would wait for the defense to adjust to him. If he had to run, he could take off and he could run, but he was always a pass-first mentality. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you were talking about it on your show earlier, Ty. When you have a guy that has a scramble capability and the defense knows that he can scramble, so they're focusing on that, but he can sit there and drop a 50-yard dime. That's special. And that's what Kyler Murray, to me, I think Kyler got a little slighted on this list. He didn't win a national championship or anything. I think he should have been a little bit higher, but we'll get into that here in just a little bit.
I don't think that that's a bad argument to make at all. Kyler was freaky, and Corey kind of slight, don't mean to get. Obviously, I'm an Alabama fan. I don't know if you've ever heard. I will go on and on. Brandon just hinted at it. Bryce Young had that ability, and he had it as well as anybody I think I've ever seen, just because he didn't have the ability to take out and run like a Kyler Murray. I mean, he was elusive, but I wouldn't say that Bryce was just like super fast. I'd say he was very elusive. But the ability for a quarterback to break out of the pocket, keep their eyes downfield, and make a defense pick and choose. If you want to stay disciplined in the secondary, I'm going to beat you with my legs. But the second you come up, a safety, a corner, a linebacker, it's going to be a 15-yard gain over your head. Quarterbacks that can do that. Corey, I don't know how much you've gotten to watch of like Bryce Young. I can sit down for days and watch quarterbacks that can do that. Texas just got a kid, KJ Lacey, 2025 class, that can do that. I'll be sitting there watching his tape with a smile from ear to ear. I just think it's so cool.
Yeah, look, I've gotten to see Bryce Young. That's a rare breed, man. When you talk about guys that have that ability and that can do that, man, it's special. Those guys don't come along often, so I think that's why you're enamored with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm also a nerd, so like it doesn't take much to like have me sitting content in front of the TV watching football.
Right? Shoot. Hey, whenever this SEC schedule starts up, Alabama and OU, y'all gonna be coming to Norman.
I know.
Come on, Ty. I got an extra bedroom, Ty. You and the lady can come on up. We can make it happen, brother. Don't even worry about that.
Trying to get WinStar to sponsor the show.
Hey, if you
they don't
WinStar,
they don't want to hit me back up. They don't want to see me shine.
They'll make it happen. You're gonna be there one day. So,
hold on, real quick. Do you want to
go ahead?
Go ahead. Talk about Matt's comments here.
Yes, I wanted to show this. When does the light bulb come on for recruits to realize that Riley doesn't help in the pros? What QB has successfully been developed by Riley? Matt Bingham, he wanted to let you know, Ty, he always loves to kind of give you a little bit of crap.
Oh, yeah. The Bill O'Brien. I love it.
Matt's the guy. But it's like, that's not a bad argument that he just made right there.
It's not, but I also, look, as all things, and I think it's because of my background, I always like, I'll think of a point, and then my first thought is like, how would I take down that point in a debate? And that's how I typically like arrive at the conclusions I do, is I've basically argued with myself until and here's the only thing I'll say, Matt, because I have my questions about the Riley system, but the only reason I can't put my finger on anything concrete is Baker Mayfield went through how many different coaches and offensive coordinators whenever he first got to the NFL? That was as tumultuous as it could be. I don't wish that on anybody, especially at the NFL, where they're drafting people. Name another job where every year they're drafting somebody to take your job.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
And you have no that's tough. And Kyler, as freaky as Kyler is, and I don't want to sound, look, I don't know him, but from all indications, it doesn't sound like anything developmental wise is Kyler's biggest issue. I think Kyler's biggest issue is the lack of an offensive line from the Arizona Cardinals. I think that's more of an organization. So, Matt, I don't think you're wrong. Right. That's my point here isn't to say that you're wrong, because like I said, I as well have my questions about the Riley evolution. But I also think in the interest of fairness, it's hard for me to look at Baker and Kyler and be like, those are like great examples. And look, Jalen.
He took it. He took it from me because I was literally about to bring that up. Jalen, to me, yes, he came from Saban, Matt, but I think we can all say right now, if he did not make that transition to Oklahoma, Nick Saban made him a good football player. Lincoln Riley made him a quarterback.
Well, we know how Jalen ended up at Oklahoma. You know that story, right?
Hit me.
So he was actually going to transfer to either Miami or Maryland.
Yes, I heard about that.
He came into Coach Saban's offense and told him, and Coach Saban basically said, hey, I'm not here to tell you where to go. Right. But he asked him one question. Who's putting the quarterbacks in the league right now? And he said, Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma. He said, then go to Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma.
That's love. That's love right there. That's love right there.
Yep.
And so, Matt, I don't disagree with you, brother. Like and we've talked about this on my show, Matt. I do have my questions about the evolution of that Riley defense, and that's why I think Caleb is the prospect I'm most interested in. That's why I was so interested in his sophomore year, and I'll be so interested in his junior year.
He's gonna follow it up, man. That's the one that left Oklahoma when Lincoln left. That was the one I was like, that one. That hit the heart and the chest a little bit harder than any other player that left Oklahoma. Because today, let's just be real. If you don't have a good quarterback, you don't have a guy that can transform the game for you, you're not playing in the college football playoff.
No.
It's just not happening.
Oklahoma doesn't have a losing record, and USC isn't one game away from the college football playoff.
I agree with that.
Like, I mean, we're talking massive swings and how this season goes down.
I agree. I agree. So,
back
kind of to hop back in here into this list. Number 6. When you have a Deshaun Watson at number 6,
ridiculous.
That I agree 100%.
Y'all saying it's too high?
No.
But the thing is like, as much as I want to say too low, I start looking at the names above him, and I'm like, man, this is a really solid list. It's just there's so many good quarterbacks.
I agree. So when you look at this, though, you got a guy. What did he win? He won one national championship, but he beat Nick Saban in the Crimson Tide.
Yeah. In the wire.
10,000 over 10,500 yards. He had a 67% completion rate, 90 touchdowns, throwing, mind you, 32 interceptions. Almost 2,000 rushing yards and 26 touchdowns. Ty, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, he only played 2 years as a starter.
Yeah, I think he played a little bit that first year, but I don't think he was the starter full time. I think the 2 years is a full time starter. And I mean,
you see what I'm getting at here. I mean, to put up those kind of numbers, and you literally probably only played 2 full seasons.
It was ridiculous. 2 full seasons, but if I'm not, let me look it up. I know he played a little bit of that season before, and he put up good numbers. I think he came in relief of the quarterback that was starting over him. But the majority of that work was done in the 2 seasons. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, he arguably he could have won a Heisman. They didn't give it to him. They gave it to somebody else. But then what did he do when they didn't give him the Heisman? He just followed up and won a national championship. Like, okay. Like, all right. You don't want to give me that Heisman? Let me just go beat Alabama in the national championship, show you what it's about. Which, sorry, Ty, I know that one strikes a little nerve with you, my guy, being an Alabama fan and everything.
It was a pick play.
It was a pick play.
I get it.
No, fair on them. Fair, because look,
it was a successfully run pick play.
If Bama could have ran it for the national title victory, do you think I would have cared? No. So good on you. Good on you.
No, absolutely.
If Bama should have faked the penalty, like take a dive. I don't know, but like good on you. I don't care.
They ain't gonna call that in that moment. We all know that.
I say I don't care. As I cry silently internally.
No, you absolutely. Hey, man, I'd love to just have one of those as an OU fan. So, go ahead. What's your thoughts on this one, Corey? What do you think? Deshaun being number 6.
I think that's about right. If I'm looking at the list, I take. There's some guys behind him I would take over him. I would definitely take a Lamar Jackson over him.
Whoa.
I would probably take Kyler too, bro.
That's a hot take.
I'm just saying what he has that the other two don't have is the natty.
I mean, let's just be real. The only thing stopping Deshaun Watson is massage therapist. I mean, you know what I'm saying? The dude's an absolute baller.
No,
you know what I'm saying? He's a baller.
If we're just talking college, though, I didn't think he was
fair. I
didn't see him transitioning to the NFL well. I didn't know he was going to be that good in the NFL. I thought he was a really, really good college quarterback. I didn't know he was going to be that special when he got to the Texans.
I mean, because something that I want to point out too, most of these guys that are in these tops, if Kyler could have had a defense even close to what they had at Clemson, if Baker, we're going to get to it, he's number 1. But if they could have had defenses even close, even Jalen Hurts, if he could have had a defense that was capable of stopping the other team, we might be thinking differently of them than what we do now. That's a fair point. What do you think, Todd?
Look, I think that especially when I look at like Lamar, when I look at Kyler, I think there is an argument where you could put them over Deshaun Watson, but I think that the flip side of that argument is equally as logical. And I think it really depends what you're wanting from those positions, because if you just need like the ability to keep a defense completely scrambled, Deshaun Watson just keeps you guessing, because I don't know that he's as gifted as a runner as like Lamar. I know he's not. But he's just so balanced in his approach. And that's always what really stood out to me, was the balance he presented really posed threats. But that being said, man, like I think that there are attributes that Kyler brought to the table that are better. And I think that there are attributes Lamar brought to the table that are better. It just all depends on what you want to do. I think those three are really an interesting talking point. And depending on how you want to rank them, I think you're open.
That's absolutely fair. There's nothing wrong with that at all. You got anything else on this one before we hop into this next one?
Forget about this next one.
This one's interesting.
This one, I'm sorry, he's too low. Because to me, in my mind, now granted, I want to make it known, this is off total career. You see what I'm saying? So this is your total career in the college football level. But Joe Burrow at number 5, really? Really? To me, Joe Burrow had one of those seasons that year, 2019 LSU. I would argue that was probably one of the greatest college football teams ever. So for him to do that, because really there's really 1 year for Joe Burrow that he had where he was really the guy. What did he do? He won a Heisman and he won a Natty. And then he got picked number 1 overall. And then he's just transitioned that to the NFL. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about college career. I would definitely have Joe Burrow a little higher on this list, but we're going to get into that. But the dude was absolutely phenomenal. He had over 8,800 passing yards, 69% completion percentage, 78 touchdowns, only 11 interceptions, and 13 more rushing yards, or 13 rushing touchdowns. So you look at all this, is Joe Burrow a little low or a little high, just cracking the top 5? What's y'all's opinions?
I think he's about right where he should be. Look, Joe Burrow was sensational, but I think we also need to remember, man, that LSU team
Stacked.
was ridiculous. Think about
Yeah.
it like this. You have Joe Burrow, you had Jamar Chase, you had Justin Jefferson, you had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you had Thaddeus Moss.
Yeah.
That's off the top of the dome,
Terrace
right?
Marshall.
So that's not to take anything away from Joe Burrow, because that 1 year was about as special of a year as I think you can argue.
They had 14 first-round draft picks that year, too, if I'm not mistaken, off of that squad. Just first round.
Yeah, well, I think players that ended up playing on that squad, it was 14. So like that
14.
That was a ridiculously good team. But yeah, Joe Burrow, I think he's about right where he should be. Because when we get into the guys before him, I think there are arguments for every player ahead of Joe Burrow to be ahead of Joe Burrow. And here's the thing. And I think when we get to it, you'll see what I mean. I think that there's an easier path to putting Tim Tebow, Vince Young, Cam, and Baker ahead of Joe Burrow than the reverse argument, than arguing Joe Burrow needs to be above Tim Tebow, Vince Young, Baker, or Cam. I just think that the other ones are easier to argue.
That's fair.
I'm gonna say this. I got this pulled up. I can't share it because I'm already sharing the other screen. First in FBS history in touchdown passes in a season, 60 touchdowns. First in FBS history in total yards of offense in a season, 6,039. First in FBS history in most touchdowns responsible for in a season, 65. First in FBS history in points responsible. Bro, this list is another ridiculous. 15 dots deep. He broke all kind of SEC records. I can't even read the whole list because it would take too long. I understand having Justin Jefferson, who's probably the best receiver in football in my eyes, and then Jamar Chase, who's probably like top 3 right now in the NFL. I get all of that, but to do what he did, even with those weapons, is pretty special. I would put him a little higher on the list. I just would.
Who are you going to move out?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'd move.
Because I hear you.
Hey, we'll get into that. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to get into that, absolutely, because the next guy on this list, Tim Tebow, Florida. He had over 9,300 passing yards, 66% completion percentage, 88 touchdowns to only 16 interceptions. The guy was an absolute train in the running game, too. He had over 2,900 yards, 57 rushing touchdowns. He also won a Heisman. He won a national championship. He's another one of those guys, though. If you're going to sit there and talk about Joe Burrow having Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and everything,
yes,
Tim Tebow had some ballers on
you want to know the difference?
Too.
You want to know the difference?
Give it to me.
Tim Tebow was good for a while. He didn't have to transfer, and then he wasn't borderline bad for a year before he finally got good.
That's
a good point.
That's a great point.
I hate to be that way, but that's the reality of the situation.
That's absolutely fair.
Lost the job at Ohio State. He got to LSU, and nobody in their right mind thought he would get drafted after his first year at LSU. And then he put together one of the most special seasons. So I hear you, but at that point, God, Corey, I think you are right, though. I do think that you could argue him over. But I think that if I'm arguing Tim Tebow, it's the longevity of Tim Tebow that I think we have to give the nod to.
It's the longevity. It's not like you're saying not having to leave and go anywhere else. He was the guy. Heisman Trophy winner as a sophomore. He was on 2 natty teams, right? He was on
2
that
national
06,
titles.
He was a freshman on that 06 team. So the dude was special in college, man. No argument here. It's just a preference. I'd probably take Joe over Tim Tebow. Just
now,
if I was starting a team, no doubt.
Absolutely. But we can't do it as like NFL players.
No, yeah, we're looking at their
college careers. Yeah. And Tim Tebow is a college quarterback. He took one from my Sooners that we should have got, but damn it, it is what it is.
You got to remember too, Tim Tebow was a bulldozer, man. That dude would just run dudes over and then throw it.
He would. He would. But I mean, hey, I can't argue with it. 4 or 5. A lot of people have a lot of different arguments. We're gonna get into that here in a little bit. Number 3, though, this to me, him or the next one up is gonna be who I'm gonna argue for number 1, Vince Young. You want to talk about a player that now, granted, I'm a Sooners fan, so I absolutely
I
hate.
was just about to say that.
I absolutely hate everything burnt orange. But to say that Vince Young wasn't an absolute baller and didn't handle his business in college football is an understatement. I mean, he had a little bit more completion percentage. He's the lowest completion percentage at 62. He had over 6,000 passing yards, 44 touchdowns, 28 interceptions. But look at those rushing numbers. This guy was he was like a running back at the quarterback position before all these other guys that we had just mentioned. You know what I'm saying? This is early 2000s that we're talking about here. He had over 3,200 rushing yards and 37 rushing touchdowns to go along with that. So he was like in that time when Michael Vick was running the NFL and a running quarterback was like the big thing. So there was a lot of times Vince Young probably could have passed the ball, but he ran it. You see what I'm saying? But it worked out well for him because they beat a USC Trojans team that year.
Loaded.
It was loaded. Now, I make these arguments with Texas fans all the time. It wasn't as loaded as the year before when they played Oklahoma and absolutely ran us out of the stadium. But they still had Matt Leinart. They still had Reggie Bush. They still had Lindell White. And Texas came up in there in the Rose Bowl and beat them in their backyard. So, to me, Vince Young should be higher on this list, but putting him at 3, I'm not going to make any kind of arguments. What y'all say?
So, you remember earlier when I said there's a lot of different ways to look at this?
Right.
Vince Young arguably has the most iconic moment in college football history. I mean, you think about it. When you think national championship, how long does it take for you to play in your mind that play where he scrambles into the end zone to win the national championship for Texas? Because for me, it's like the first play I think of when I think of the college football national championship is that.
I agree with that.
Run.
Thank you, Matt.
It was fourth down, too. It was fourth down.
And Vince was incredible for that team. Now, here's the interesting thing. Vince is a little bit of an incredible prospect because the season before, he was actually benched. I don't know if y'all remember. He was benched for a while, and then he came back that next year and put together not only an incredible season, but an incredible storyline.
Yep.
Vince is a very unique figure in college football for me. Someone that I actually hold very dearly in like my pantheon of college football.
He's special. He was special. Any player that like wills your team to a national title, because he literally, whenever you talk about those moments, Ty, he will. If that Texas team didn't have a Vince Young, they weren't beating USC. Let's just call it what it is.
Oh yeah.
But that's why he's number 3 on this list, because those type of players make those kind of plays. So, no, Vince Young was absolutely special. I kind of thought that he was going to do a little bit more in the NFL than what he did, but he didn't. So what can you say?
Yeah, that was a tough situation. Jeff Fisher ruins all.
I love that. Corey, what you got on Vince Young?
No, man, look, I always, when people ask me where did I play college ball, I always told them, I played at Oklahoma State, and I played during the Vince Young, Adrian Peterson years.
Oh.
You know what I mean? So those 2 guys I got to see up close and personal, and Vince Young was just an absolute freak show, bro. The dude can turn it on, and you think you got him 1 second, and he'll take it 80 yards on you like that. Probably one of the best football players I've ever been on the field with.
Y'all continue this. I got something that came up real quick. Give me just a second. I'll be back in like 5 seconds.
All right. But yeah, man, that dude is special, bro. Gosh, man. It's hard. Now look, number 2, Ty, I'm gonna say this. Cam Newton, this is my number one.
Oh, I agree with you.
You agree with that?
I do agree with you because I've never seen, and God, I hate to do it. It's like PTSD. It's like the flashbacks are coming back, right?
24-0. Was it 24-0 or
It was
21-0?
I think it was 24-0. Bama first half dominating Auburn, and I'm thinking, yep, this is it. Another national championship in the books. Like, I'm ready. Second half comes out, and I have never, ever seen anything like it since. Where whenever, and I know it's interesting, Corey, because earlier I just said, like, well, the Joe Burrow argument, right, is that he had one season that's all-time great, and then Tim Tebow has the consistency. Even though Cam Newton is a little bit the same way, where it was the 1 year that was all-time great, it was how it happened, where he didn't have a whole lot on that team, right? Like,
name an offensive player from that team. Like, you would have to. It's going to take you a minute to do it.
And the defense was ranked 56th.
Cadillac Williams?
Cadillac Williams was on that team, but the defense was ranked like 56th in the nation. To give you perspective, the Baker Mayfield defense, whenever they went up against Georgia, was 64th in the nation. So there was only a slim margin between the Auburn defense and that Oklahoma defense. Granted, different time period of college football, different stylistic approaches to offense, which does create differences, right? I think that slight differentiation in defensive rank probably makes a big deal of difference after the spread offense invades college football. Yeah. And now we go from scoring 25 points across the board to 40 points. Yeah. So that's probably a fair point in Oklahoma's favor. But at the end of the day, I've never seen someone like Cam just do what Cam did. And there was nothing Alabama could do to stop him in that. No. It was a half. It was a half. I would take the past, like last year, I would take that entire year of having to relive that, then relive that one half against that ugly blue and orange team. It was terrible.
And it was it not in Bama? Was it
No.
No, it was in Auburn.
It was neutral site.
It was a neutral site?
It wasn't at Auburn?
No, it was at Auburn.
I thought it was at
I think it was in Tuscaloosa.
It was in Tuscaloosa. He pulled up in there to Bama. Oh boy.
Bro, 1,500 rush yards, 24 touchdowns, 24 rushing touchdowns, and 1,500 rushing yards in one season, dog.
We didn't bring this up whenever we talked about Vince Young. I had to witness that too whenever Vince Young pulled up at the Red River and absolutely mopped my Sooners. So, Ty, I'm gonna give you a little bit there, man. I feel you. Them rivalry games sting a little differently. They just sting. You hate them Auburn Tigers. They ain't no good.
I don't miss their trees either.
What do y'all call them? Because we call the Longhorns. They're the Shorthorns. We call them the Shorthorn. What do y'all call them? I just
call them Auburn. Auburn's going to Auburn, man. Auburn takes care of it for me. I don't have to say a word. Right? Listen. Before we go any further, this is my dig to Auburn, right? And this is going to perfectly summarize that. They try and launch an internal coup against Brian Harsin a year ago because of allegations of an extramarital affair, right? Basically, crimes of moral turpitude is what they were going to fire him for. So, boy, howdy, wouldn't you know who they hired? They hired Hugh Freeze.
Wow.
I don't have to say a word.
Wow.
Auburn
awesome.
Takes care of it.
That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. Which, with all jokes aside, that was actually
he was an incredible coach.
Hire.
Oh,
good
no.
hire. Good
He's
hire.
an incredible coach. Hey.
But when you're talking about one that went on at Ole Miss, everything else, I'm with you.
It's just like, what are we doing here, guys?
Yeah.
What's happening?
That's classic, bro. That's hilarious. The irony of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always going to stick out to me. Always.
The number one on this list.
You know what? I've had so many people mad about it.
I've got it on my head. I'm an OU fan. I absolutely love Baker Mayfield, but we kind of broke down the stats for every quarterback for their career, correct? We broke it down. Nobody's stats are looking like that. Nobody's.
Well,
they're not. And I would make the argument for Baker being an OU fan, just like I did for Kyler. What kind of defense was he working with? He wasn't working with much. I mean, the defense was like probably that defense that they played
64th
against.
in the nation.
See what I'm saying? That defense that they had against Georgia in that semifinal, which was an absolute classic back in 2017, which I would argue was probably Baker's best year, best chance to win something. They could not stop Nick Chubb and Sonny Michel that whole entire game. So when we're talking just clearly winning a national championship, Baker would have had a competent defense. I'd say top 50 defense. Top 50. That's all he needed. And they were outscoring that other opponent. Because he was just that type of special player. And for him to go, all them other players that were on this list didn't necessarily have to go the route that Baker Mayfield had to go.
He and Joe Burrow, not it's totally same, but like decently.
Yeah.
Right. Joe Burrow won the chip, but if Baker was on that team that Joe Burrow was on with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Thaddeus Small, Baker would have won a chip too. So I'll put that aside. But he was special. But me being even an OU fan, I'm with you guys. I heard y'all in my headphones. I got to have Cam at number 1 on this list. You just have to. You know what I mean? I'm not making any arguments towards that. What do y'all say?
Look, so there's a lot of pushback at Baker being number 1. And I think it's because of the lack of a national championship, right? And because Oklahoma didn't win a playoff game. But my pushback has always been, but how was Baker?
He was a baller.
And that's when most people who are arguing against it go, well, Baker was actually really good. Yeah, he was really, and that's when you kind of start realizing Baker was awesome in college, man.
That loss to Georgia wasn't on Baker Mayfield.
No.
It was not. It was not. That was all Lincoln and bad coaching decisions in that second half. And go ahead.
Well, it's just you can't get timid when you have that offense and if you're worried about the defense.
Right.
You can't get timid.
No.
Put the foot on the gas. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Just like there was a great quote. I don't know if y'all remember whenever DeSoto beat a team so bad here in Texas, it was like 114-0. And they actually ended up getting sued by the opposing school district. And the coach had a quote that I just love. And he was just like, so I took my starters out the game, and then I put the second string in the game, and then I took them out the game, and then I put he said the second, third, and fourth stringers practice just as hard as the first stringers. When they get on the football field, all of a sudden I'm supposed to tell them that their hard work is for nothing and that they can't go play football. He said, I'm not going to do that. So I told them go. And I was like, you're right. Go. If the clock is still going, I don't care. I'm going to score on you. Like that's always perplexed me because you had the ability to, you had the team to, but look, Baker was sensational.
Because we want to talk about Joe Burrow and the weapons that he had. Those weapons that Baker had are pretty damn good in the NFL right now.
True.
You know what I'm saying? When you're talking about a CeeDee Lamb, Hollywood Brown, Mark Andrews, and if I'm not mistaken, one of the best offensive lines in the nation that season. I think they won the Joe. Did they win the Joe Moore in 2018 or was it 2017? I couldn't remember. I think it was 2018 Kyler's year, but I couldn't remember if it was Baker's year or Kyler's year.
I want to say it was Baker's year.
I think it was Baker's year.
Was it the year that they lost to Georgia in the semifinal?
The only reason I think that is when I remember that Bama OU game, Quinnen Williams wreaked havoc on that offensive line. I think the offensive line the year before went toe-to-toe with that Dogs defensive front and held their own. That was a phenomenal offensive line.
Ty, you as a Bama fan, if we would have had 5 more minutes, we was going to get y'all. Just saying. It's another topic for another day, though. It's another topic for another day.
I'd have loved to seen that, though, bro. I was really upset they lost to Georgia.
You want to know why I know?
Why is that?
There's one moment in that game, Brandon, and if we ever go back and watch it, I'll show it to you. It's when all of a sudden OU really started getting in the game and Kyler started making incredible plays, and it was right after the beautiful, long ball.
Throw to
all
Rambo.
The way, just incredible.
Rambo. Yep.
Nick got mad at the defense, and he looked at Tua and basically nodded his head. Tua jumped up smiling, put his helmet on, and in 3 scores, Bama went 75 yards and scored.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remembered, they stopped throwing the football. And then Nick said to Tua, throw it again, and within 3 plays, they...
I remember. That
was the only reason.
Yeah, y'all had some ballers. Y'all had some ballers on that team, too.
Devontae Smith on that RPO slant route is unstoppable.
Oh, man.
Jalen Waddle. I mean, the list goes on.
Bro.
The list goes on, man.
Best draft moment is when Jalen Waddle was drafted. I don't know if y'all remember, his family stood up and said, "It's Waddell." Everybody's been mispronouncing his name the entire time.
Waddell.
It was great.
I do remember that.
It's Waddell.
Oh my gosh.
So good.
We kind of broke down this top 10, guys. We've seen where it's at. How are we going to reorder this thing? Our opinion. Ty, I'll start with you.
So look, I don't have much of an issue with the list. I would put Cam number 1, but like I said, I all think that depends on how you preference the list. Like when Corey said he'd put Joe Burrow ahead of Tim Tebow, the more I think about it, look, if we're starting a team right now and I have the number 1 pick and you say I get Joe Burrow or Tim Tebow, Corey, it's not thought as to who I'm picking. I'm picking Joe Burrow.
Right.
Like before you even finish the sentence, I'm picking. So in that vein, no doubt about it. So I don't have much to add, but I do want to talk about some guys that didn't make the top 10, because there are some dudes on this list that are insane. You talked about Joe Burrow's stats, 14,000 yards. Corey, if you would you scroll up to number 24 for me? You want to see something ridiculous.
Okay.
Case Keenum.
Oh, man. Yeah.
19,217 yards.
Yeah.
Bro, this dude was absolute baller, bro.
Yeah, he was. He was
filthy in college, dog.
Yeah.
He was filthy at Houston. I remember watching
Ridiculous. And so we have these little outliers, right? So you have him. You have Kellen Moore, who threw for 14,000 yards at Boise. Russell Wilson at 26. Awesome, right? But here's where it gets fun. You have Big Ben at 28.
Okay.
But here's where the one
Justin Fields, 29.
Justin Fields. You got Troy Smith at 33. Graham
you
Harrell,
Pat
34.
White earlier. Pat White's a sneaky. That's a
Pat
sneaky
White,
name, man. I forget how good he was in college, bro.
Baller.
So I got to plug up my guy. But you want to know another stat line that's crazy? At 38, Mac Jones. Check out. It was 1 year. 1 year, and I'm not saying he should be any higher. That's not, my point is just read that. 6,126 passing yards, 74% completion percentage, 56 touchdowns, 2 interceptions.
Was that the COVID year?
They played 10 SEC games. That's what he did against a straight SEC schedule. Yeah, it was ridiculous. Now, granted, the weapons on that team, right? You're talking
the 4 receivers.
Najee Harris. The year before is when they had Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy. They lose those 2, and then it's Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and John Mechie.
Yes, that's what I was thinking about.
Ballers.
Yes.
Ballers. That insane year. This list is cool, man. When you start going through it and you start seeing the names, it's cool. It's really fun. We did this for about an hour.
Landry Jones, bro, was the Big 12 all-time leading passer.
That was the one. Landry Jones. As an Oklahoma fan.
42, Colt Brennan.
Oh, he was a beast too. He held a lot of records before they got broken, man.
Bro, 14. Think about this. In 2005.
70%.
In 2005 to 2007, this man threw for 14,000 yards and a 70% completion percentage
3 years
before the spread.
That's facts. It wasn't a lot of spread offenses back in 2005, bro.
Number
I can
45.
attest to that. Eric Crouch.
My heart.
Wow.
I'll never forget watching VHS tapes of Eric Crouch at Nebraska with my dad. Yeah. That's a special one to me.
Brady Quinn, huh?
Eli Manning.
Is it just me, or whenever I think of Brady Quinn, there's like an entire decade in my mind of Notre Dame history that's just like the Brady Quinn era, even though he was only there 3 years. In my mind, I feel like he was there a decade.
He battled them USC Notre Dame battles whenever Brady Quinn was there. Was it him and Matt Leinart going up against each other? That was absolute battles.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, was Matt Leinart there the same years that Brady Quinn was?
He was.
2003 through 06. Yeah, there was a couple years. Those were some battles.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, no, Brady Quinn. I agree with you on that. That one right there. Stop right there. Number 50.
Denard Robinson.
That dude right there. He was
Laces.
that guy. Oh my God. I used to love watching it. He made the cover of NCAA football. I can't remember what
14.
year it was.
It was last year.
Yes. So that dude was an absolute baller as well.
Unbelievable. And I'll never forget Michigan opened up that 2012 season against Alabama. And I was like going into that year like, man, this is going to be so much fun. Denard, and I think he ended up actually getting hurt, but even when he played, he was so good. I mean,
right. No, that dude was special.
RG3 was 10.
Tell him, Ty.
David Carr, look at that. Brad Banks. I remember Brad Banks.
Man.
Bro.
For an Iowa
Isn't this list so cool?
Look, stop it right there. Patrick Mahomes, number 57.
57. Woo.
So, see, this is one that we actually stopped and talked about because my whole thing was, didn't he drop 800 yards or 600 plus yards in a game?
Yeah.
Against OU? Bring that up. Did you have to bring that up, Ty?
Baker dropped 600 himself.
I know. We won. We won the game, but our defense was just pitiful.
I mean, so was theirs.
That was PlayStation 3 at that time, video game numbers. You know what I'm saying? It was ridiculous.
They were just ridiculous. Texas Tech was consistently 6-6, 7-5 all of those years he was there. So that hurts him a lot. You know what I mean?
They were terrible. Aaron Rodgers,
Matt Barkley.
Duggan was interesting to me. But I mean, like when you think about Duggan, what he did, I just thought it was interesting.
He had the 1 year. He literally had the 1 year that he kind of broke out onto the scene because those years before they were waiting for him. Because if you remember, Chandler Morris, that transferred from Oklahoma, was actually the starter.
Mm-hmm.
He got hurt. Duggan took over. And then he kind of just was like, nah, you're not getting this job back. It's just not happening.
Yep. Kevin Cobb. Whoa, I remember him. A.J. McCarron. I felt like he got slept on, man.
That's one that, I hate to be a homer, I think this is one we could argue is a little too low, only because he won multiple national championships, almost a 70% completion percentage. The stats are good. I'm not saying they're eye-popping, they're, oh my God, amazing, but it's the totality of his career. I mean, I think it deserves a little bit more recognition than this.
I agree.
Yeah.
Brad Smith at Missouri. I remember that guy.
Smith.
Geno. Brandon Whedon. There's your guy, Corey.
Hey,
there
man.
He is.
2011 outright Big 12 champs, baby.
Boy, what a season, too.
Bro, you know who he beat that season? He beat RG3. Man, he beat a lot of people that season that went on to have great careers. That was RG3's Heisman year.
Andrew Luck in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yep.
Beat Andrew Luck in the Fiesta
Fiesta
Bowl.
Bowl, yeah.
Timmy Chang. Yeah.
Oh,
That's a throwback.
wow.
That's a guy right there.
17,000 yards at 57%. Imagine if my man had a completion percentage. We'd be at almost
Look at those
20,000
yards.
yards.
Yeah, look at those yards.
My
yards are
goodness.
ridiculous,
Hey,
bro.
but you know what? Not only did he get many a wide receiver paid, he got many a DB paid. He got many a DB paid.
He did.
80
did.
interceptions.
Oh my gosh. That's your old classic Jameis Winston year in the NFL when he had 30 and 30 or whatever.
That's everybody's favorite quarterback. Offenses
Right.
love him, defenses love him.
Yep.
Oh man.
General managers
absolutely.
hate him.
You got Teddy Bear. When you got Matt Ryan at number 75 on this list, it just goes to show you.
Damn good list.
You see what I'm saying? That just goes to show you right there. So,
Isn't
like,
this a fun list, man?
Hopping into this stuff. I'm sorry, I kind of changed it up on us here. We're out of this thing now. So we kind of talked about our list, everything else. Let's talk a little bit of college football, and then we'll go ahead and let you off of here for the night, Ty. Let you get back to your lady. You're about to be a newlywed. Congratulations.
Oh,
as
she's
well.
passed out. She is
I hear
asleep
you.
right now.
I hear you. So let's break down a little bit of college football right now. So where do we see it going? Like, if we had to right now, I know this is early. We haven't seen everything yet. We're sitting here in June. Who's your Final Four right now, Ty? Who you got?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I usually do my top list about a month or two before the season starts because I'm still in the film watching phase, and I'm still diving into how a lot of these teams are going to replace some of their losses. I mean, we can talk about the obvious picks, right? Georgia plays absolutely nobody. I mean, absolutely nobody. And look, that's not all entirely Georgia's fault. They had scheduled Oklahoma. Georgia didn't cancel that game. Oklahoma didn't cancel that game. The SEC canceled that game. That was out of either of their controls. Right. We lose. The college football fan loses. Right. Georgia's an obvious answer. I know everybody's going to look at their offense, ask what are they going to be able to do with Stetson Bennett not there. Carson Beck is there. But I think the more interesting conversation to me is what's going to happen with the offensive coordinator. Todd Monken, guys, was sensational for Georgia the past few years. We talked about this ad nauseum on my stream. Whenever TCU had beaten Michigan, right, we had the conversation, could they do the same thing to Georgia? Because TCU has the ability to stretch the defense vertically, which has been the one area, if we can call it a weak spot. If there's one way we've seen to attack Georgia's defense, you better have fast, athletic wide receivers. Right. Because Georgia plays man. So the openings will be there if you can get them. Whenever we talked about it, the only reason why I just thought TCU had no chance against Georgia was way more balanced than Michigan. If you took away Michigan's running game, their quarterback situation's fine, but they just didn't show to be dangerous enough through the air to really be worried about anything else other than that running game. With Georgia, if you take away the running game, they still have answers.
Well, Michigan didn't have their starting running back in that game either.
No, they did not.
If they had their start, now granted, the backup that they had, the name escapes me, but he was special as well. But if they would have had Corum, we might
be talking about a different conversation. I don't disagree with you at all. And to prove the point, even if they do have Corum, that's still kind of arguing the same line of logic where we're still talking about Michigan's running game, right? To where TCU is hyper focused on that. With Georgia, if you take away their running game, you still have to worry about A.D. Mitchell. You still have to worry about Brock Bowers because Stetson's throwing it. If you disrupt the passing game, they've got 4 running backs deep that they're just waiting to unleash. Georgia's offense with what Todd Monken wanted to do was so balanced. I'm interested to see how Mike Bobo picks up the reins of that offense because that's the conversation nobody's having, and I've been shocked.
It's starting, though. Kirby Smart's starting to build something he learned from his predecessor, Nick Saban. You know what I'm saying? It's basically like you're going to lose coordinators. It's going to happen. You just replace them. You plug and you play.
Yep.
Last time Bobo was at Georgia, that offense was also scoring at around the same rate this past Georgia offense scored at. So he's commanded high tier offenses at Georgia before. It's not like that's a foreign concept. My point isn't like doubting Georgia's offense. It's mainly like praising Todd Monken. I'm more surprised people don't talk about how good Todd Monken was as an offense is. Yes, thank you. But as an offensive coordinator, especially at Georgia, that offense was so fun, guys. Watch a Georgia game whenever you have a chance and just focus on the balance of that offense. It gave defense fits. They didn't know what to do.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Georgia, LSU, boys. LSU's really good. Here's the thing.
Okay.
Before the season started last year, the player that I thought would be the best player on their defense got hurt. Now, that's scary considering we know what Harold Perkins is now, and my argument isn't that he's better than Harold Perkins. Mason Short is a true freshman on that defensive line, was unbelievable for the Tigers. He gets hurt, but we have to remember they got Wingo from Missouri. They did a lot of work along that defensive line. We talked about it in my stream a few weeks ago. Can you rebuild through the portal? And I think a team people often overlook when asking that question is LSU. And when Brian Kelly got there, Jaden Daniels, he took out the portal. Several of the DBs, he took out the portal. Several defensive linemen out the portal. Kyron Lacey out the portal. Noah Kane out the portal. He did a lot of great work. That LSU team, boys, the defense is going to be good. The offense is going to be good. And whether you're a Jaden Daniels fan or not, there's a guy behind him who's dangerous. Nussmeier.
Yep.
I thought when he got in the game against Georgia, that offense just transformed. It was a different offense in that SEC championship game. Am I lying, Ty?
I didn't know if he would give the job back.
That's what I thought.
I'm going to be very honest. And this is coming from someone who has been a vocal fan of Jaden Davis. I've always said, and Corey, I think you'll resonate with this, whenever he was a freshman at Arizona State, he was sensational.
He was.
But there was so much chaos at Arizona State. It's hard enough to succeed as a college football player just in day-to-day life. Now imagine the chaos of Arizona State situation where you're under constant investigation. Coaches are throwing other coaches under the bus.
Yeah.
I don't expect anybody to really be able to be at their best in that situation because the coaches aren't at their best. The program's not at its best. So how am I supposed to hold the players to be at their best when nothing around them is functioning? So when he went to LSU, I was so excited that he would get a new opportunity. But that being said, Garrett Nussmeier is dangerous.
Yeah.
Real dangerous.
Yes, Matt. A&M is going to be much improved from last season. I believe that they will be. With that recruiting haul that they got in 2022, those guys are a year older. They didn't lose their key guys to the portal. Am I wrong in saying that? They're going to have the D-line. They got players.
They didn't lose the guys in the portal. Look, they lost a lot of guys to the transfer portal. They lost a haul. I think the second most in the SEC behind Arkansas. And Arkansas had an exodus, which is really interesting. But here's the thing.
They had them.
They still got about 5 or 6 5-star defensive linemen. So and they lost Denver Harris, the 5-star cornerback, but that's a situation, knock on wood, that is best for both parties. That marriage was not working. I'm not going to say anything else, but just know that marriage was not working. It's best for Denver to get out of there. And boys, you know where he went? LSU.
Yeah.
The former 5-star cornerback.
Yep.
So yeah, LSU is a team, man. I'm really excited about the Tigers.
Hey, what are your thoughts about old Rattler in South Carolina? What did they? I mean, they finished strong last year.
Finished real strong. 2 questions for South Carolina offensively. How do you replace the running back? How do you replace the tight end? It's not that they lost one and kept the other. It's that you lost both.
Yep.
South Carolina also had a little bit of an exodus, but at the same time, Shane Beamer has been there. Rattler is now not new. the way he finished out the year, I've always said this, Rattler is as talented as any quarterback in the nation. Unfortunately, the year where presumably he'll be coming out, he'll be battling against Caleb Williams and Drake May. I don't think you're making up that ground, right? Because those two have been so good for that long.
Yeah.
Right.
But that being said, Rattler is so gifted. Physical ability has never even begun to be the question for Spencer Rattler. I'm excited for him this year. And for South Carolina as a whole, it's a big year for Shane Beamer.
I mean, what? They're going to win about 9 games, 8 games?
Yeah, they've been
but in the
SEC,
that's definitely, I don't know. I'm not against Spencer Rattler by any means. I'm with you, Ty. He's a very talented quarterback. But when you're in the same draft class as those two guys that you just mentioned, you're not going to overtake those guys by any means. But as far as just a quarterback that can drop back and the spin on his ball, the accuracy that he's able to throw with, if you can give him time. If he doesn't have an offensive line, though, that can give him time, Spencer Rattler is no good because he's not one of those guys that are going to necessarily make plays with his feet. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So when you have that type of guy, everything kind of has to be right around him. And as you alluded to, Ty, the running back leaving. You lost Austin Stogner back to OU. That's going to hurt. You're going to feel that. And, I mean, but shout to Shane Beamer. He's definitely been recruiting at a high level. He's definitely got some playmakers that are going to be coming into that program. Just don't know if it's going to be right for Spencer. Something I do want to hop into, though, here, Matt, in the comments section. I'd be remiss if I didn't at least bring this up and at least ask this question. How much does OU improve from 6-7? And I honestly think it's going to be a much different Oklahoma football team than what we've seen last season. I do not believe we go 6-7 again. I see more of like a 9-3, 10-2 season this year, which in my eyes as an Oklahoma fan, I'm happy about that. We have another 6-7 year, though. There's going to be some people asking for Brent Venables' job. Not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's right, but that's how it'll go here in Norman.
Well, here's the thing, man. With the schedule OU has,
I was just about to say.
And look, I've loved what Brent Venables has done. If he goes 6-7, I don't even know that we start having the conversation. Is it right to look in another direction? Because with that schedule, a 6-7 outcome to me personally, and look, I think it'd be very hard to recruit at a top 10 level with back-to-back years like that when other schools like Texas, Georgia, Bama, USC, they're all going to start negative recruiting OU and be like, with that schedule, that's what you got. Why don't you come here and you know what you'll get? Like we lost. No, I completely agree. OU is going to be a much improved team. No doubt about it. Defense is still a work in progress.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And that's not something that's going to get built overnight. But when I am looking at this schedule, you just put it up here for us, Corey. Arkansas State, that's a W.
W.
SMU, W.
I like SMU, but W.
They're not beating Oklahoma and Norman.
No. God, no.
Tulsa, W. Cincinnati, that's kind of like a sleeper, but they're not. They lost Luke Fickell, everything else.
You should
that should be a W. Iowa State, if I was in Ames, I'd feel a little different about that. That's a W. There's the game. There it is right there. Yeah. That's the one you can flip a coin.
That's a 50-50.
Because it's a rivalry. That game, it never matters.
It absolutely is. But then you look at the rest of the schedule. We don't have a Kansas State on the schedule. We don't have to play Texas Tech, who I think a lot of people are sleeping on right now.
I agree with you.
Texas Tech is going to be a much improved football team coming in. A lot of sites that I've seen actually have Texas Tech favored in the Big 12 right now.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah.
So Texas Tech is a much improved football team. We don't have them on the schedule. I mean, we got Oklahoma State, which, come on now, Corey.
Yeah, I have nothing to say. It should be a W.
It's little bro.
It should be a W.
West Virginia. Now, this is the one time me and you talked about this. You're actually going to be in presence at this one.
I hope.
Okay.
To be in Provo, field side for OU BYU.
I need to get some pictures. I need to get some pictures from that game.
I don't know if I'm going to come back from Utah.
That's fair.
You put me in the mountains, I might not come back.
Ty, correct me if I'm wrong. Big 12 teams don't usually do good when they go up to Provo, right?
My brother in Christ, nobody does well in Provo. It seems like BYU to me is always one of those teams like Tulane, where if you see them on the schedule, you almost do that like the external you is smiling, like doing this, but inside you're like gritting your teeth, like I swear to God, if they come up and get us like they've gotten so many teams before us, they just have that ability, which is why you should beat BYU. I'm going to circle that one. BYU is just one of those teams. Historically, they will sneak up on you like a Boise State, like a Tulane. They will sneak up on you and ruin your day. They've done it way too many times.
Speaking of Boise State, I was at the Statue of Liberty Fiesta Bowl game.
May God have mercy on your soul. That was awesome.
Me and my dad. So, yeah. And then we followed it up the next year thinking, oh, we're going to the Fiesta Bowl again, so let's go ahead and head out there. West Virginia, Pat White, Steve Slayton, all them boys.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was tough. So I was in witness of all of those games. Let's go ahead. Let's hop into here. This is Ty's team right here.
Oh, yeah.
Alabama.
God's mercy.
Alabama. Where do you see your Crimson Tide at, Ty? I know you got a lot more work you got to look at.
I'm looking at this one.
That September 9th. Here's the thing, boys. I am so happy that they scheduled the games the way they did. That Bama played in Austin with Bryce Young, and that Texas now has to come to Tuscaloosa this year whenever they have to replace a quarterback. I would not want to take a brand new quarterback on the road midday in Austin, Texas. I just wouldn't. Yeah. And I'm not saying Austin is like some vaunted college football environment, but I think that goes for any team. I would not want to take a hostile environment. We know they're going to fill the stands up. So it is what it is. That September 9th game, guys, that I'm trying to go to that one as well, but I'm broke and I can't afford to sell my kidneys right now because of the rate in which I consume energy drinks. So I need both of them until I don't, and then at that point, I'll be at that game. They're going to smoke South Florida. Ole Miss, this is the thing. Ole Miss is always interesting. If you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any. What does that mean when you have three?
They don't have three. Spencer Sanders, seriously?
I don't know, man. Like, that's such a weird situation to me. Mississippi State, this pains my heart to say it because the Pirate is a legend. R.I.P. Mike Leach. You have a total change in philosophy.
Right.
From the Pirate, a pioneer of the modern offenses. Truly. I say Larry Johnson's the godfather of defensive line recruiting at Ohio State. If that's the case, then Mike Leach was the godfather of modern college football offenses.
I agree.
But Zach Arnett takes that over. Defensive philosophy, I don't know how you change that extreme in a year. Now, granted, Arnett was with Mike Leach. I want Mississippi State to be really, really good. There's so much, man. And that's just a tough situation.
You got to be realistic there. I mean,
it hurts me to say. Every time I say it, I feel dirty and I start actually arguing with myself and finding ways in which they could. It's just, it is what it is.
I'm with you.
Texas A&M and College Station. Look, I'd be a fool to just sit here and say instant Bama W. You want to know why? Texas A&M has had Bama's number in that stadium before.
Yep.
This is a more hostile environment than is Austin.
Yeah.
Luckily,
absolutely.
In theory, the quarterback should be seasoned by the time, or at least more seasoned by the time you get into October.
Who is the quarterback, Ty? Who's your starting QB?
Nobody
knows.
Call
it right now. Who are you calling?
I think it's going to be Ty Simpson. Because I think Ty Simpson, he doesn't offer you what Jalen Milroe offers in athleticism, but I think that he's probably the best in terms of passing ability without sacrificing the mobility.
Going back to like a Mac Jones year.
He's more mobile. He's a more. That being said, though, Jalen Milroe just got out of a camp with all the Bama wide receivers where they went on their own time to work with someone down in Florida. And he's really working. The guy is a grinder, man, a grinder. Everybody loves him. I've talked to some of his trainers. If it all comes together for Jalen Milroe, it's his team because he's got ability that you just can't teach.
Well, he's already there. He's the guy that should know the system. You should have a leg up.
It's right. Yes, but it's not so much. So here's the problem. New offensive coordinator is going to change the way they want to do some things because Bill O'Brien wanted to run these option routes, right? Which were really tailored to what Bryce Young wanted to do because Bryce Young, I don't know if y'all have ever seen the quote. Bill O'Brien said Bryce Young was the second or third smartest football player he'd ever been around. And the only guy he could put ahead of him was Tom Brady. He said Bryce's ability to break down film is incredible. He said they would give him a game plan on Sunday, right? Like that's when they'd send him the film. He said by Tuesday, every Tuesday, Bryce was breaking down the defenses for the offensive coordinator and actually leading the meeting.
Say that again.
Wow.
What did you just say? Did you just
Bill O'Brien said
name?
The only quarterback that he's ever been around that's any smarter than Bryce Young is Tom Brady. And I don't know if y'all remember, Bryce Young has the highest score ever recorded on the quarterback test to go into the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, his football IQ, guys, is actually stupid. Quick little turnaround. I'll give you one of the reasons why I could stand Bill O'Brien's offense. They gave Bryce Young 4 plays and said, pick. You pick.
Okay.
That's why the ball was always snapped at like 1 or 2 seconds left because he had to do everything. He set his own protections. He called all the audibles. He did everything. He is so far ahead from a football IQ standpoint. It's incredible. That being said, that's why I say there's a massive shift because that wasn't a quarterback-friendly system whenever they went from Bryce Young to Jalen Milroe and they said, hey, we're going to hand you all the same option routes that we have for Bryce Young.
That's for you, Ty.
No, not at all. Actually,
I had to throw that.
No, they'd do better putting one of him in Auburn. If they really wanted to get under Bama's skin, they'd build a statue of Bill O'Brien in Auburn. And that would fire me up.
I think this part of the schedule is real interesting. I love how they did this.
Brutal.
The back-to-back Tennessee, LSU. You get them at home though.
Back-to-back. Yep.
I think Tennessee's going to be a little bit more down this year. I think that they had their 1 year. I don't think Tennessee is going to be one of those to where because they were kind of like a Texas in the Big 12. You thought that this was going to be the year, everything else. Now, granted, you can make arguments if Hendon Hooker didn't go down last year, they might have had a little different outcome. Maybe. But I don't see Tennessee being that kind of team going forward.
It's not just the loss of Hendon Hooker. Guys, who was Hendon Hooker's boy that game?
The wide receiver,
Jalen
Hyatt.
Yeah.
He's not there anymore. Now, granted, they have Brew McCoy, and Brew McCoy they have a lot of talent on this Tennessee team. That's not to take anything away from it.
Where's Brew McCoy at, though? He can't decide if he wants to be at USC, Texas.
He's at Tennessee.
I mean, I know, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah,
his recruiting process, it was absolutely nuts.
There's a lot that goes into that, man. That would be a whole another hour.
I get it.
So Tennessee is interesting because part of the thing that killed me with that Tennessee game is and I'd love to one day, boys, when we have some time, I'll pull up the all 22 tape and I'll show y'all what just absolutely fires me up. Almost all those touchdowns came from the same formation from Tennessee. You're going to motion Hyatt out into stack formation, isolate him on a safety 1-on-1, go route with a switch underneath so that way the underneath corner picks up the inside route, Hyatt on the outside, isolated on the safety, touchdown. Again and again and again. And finally, by the fourth quarter, they were like, hey, what happens if we don't run man? And all of a sudden, it didn't happen anymore. But I was like, it took 4 quarters, Pete Golding, for you to – and look, I say that, but, at the end of the day, that was just a situation in of its own. I'm not going to doubt Tennessee because at the end of the day, they beat Bama. They get the bragging rights for a year. But a lot's changed, and it's not going to be in Neyland this year, and that's a big deal. They got to come to Tuscaloosa, and same with LSU. They got to come to Tuscaloosa That's the game, man. If I had to give you 2 games, I'm circling Texas, LSU. Those are going to be must-see TV.
Okay.
Must see.
I like that. Well, you're a little bit more of a believer in Texas than I am. I don't believe in Texas until I actually see it.
And I think that's completely fair.
That's just a Sooner fan in me. You know what I mean? But nah. I got to see it before I believe it with Texas.
Fair.
So, but Texas always recruits. They always have the players. They always have the talent. It's just a matter of, can y'all put it together? I want, as much as this pains me to say, I want Texas to do good because with OU and Texas both going to the SEC, that's kind of like a relationship thing right now. We want both of our teams to be looking good going into the SEC so that we get a little bit more respect when we go there, which, in my personal opinion, Ty, you're in the SEC as an Alabama fan. Who are you respecting more right now? Are you respecting an Oklahoma more or a Texas more right now in this situation?
Well, look, and this isn't going to be a popular, as it stands right now, Oklahoma coming to the SEC is a terrible recipe right now because of the lack of interior defensive line. Like, that's just not a conducive. Now, do I think Oklahoma will be fine? I've said this 100 times. Yeah, Brent Venables is the guy for the SEC. I love the coaching staff for the SEC. And I think that, so I think after this year, it's going to be interesting. But I have a lot of respect for Texas coming to the SEC. And I'm going to tell you why, man.
Okay.
The difference between this Texas staff and the other ones to me, look at the coaches within this. You have Bo Davis at defensive line coach. He not only has been at Texas before, he was at Alabama, then went to the Detroit Lions before coming back to college football. He's a dude.
Right.
You have Jeff Banks as a special teams coach. That's a recruiting ace. You have Kyle Flood at the offensive line coach, who did phenomenal work with Rutgers whenever he was the offensive line coach there, completely changed their offensive line around before coming to Alabama, doing great work there, and then changing. So the Texas coaching staff, top to bottom, it's the same argument I give for Oklahoma. Whenever a Texas fan will ask me why I have faith in Oklahoma, I point at the coaching staff. And like you, whenever you're like, oh, well, why Texas? I point to the coaching staff, and I'm like, a good collection of coaches. I'm willing to argue for a longer period of time for you because I think that's how you get it done, by hiring good guys. And look, sure, Matt, no doubt about it, but that's not Bo Davis's fault, right? That's not his fault. Bo Davis has been a dude. Yeah, it's one of those things where at the end of the day, I think good coaching will eventually find a way. And Sark has surrounded himself with incredible coaches. They just hired Paul Chryst.
He has to, though.
They just got Paul Chryst?
Did you see that they got Paul Chryst as an offensive analyst?
Oh, my gosh.
Not only that, they got Paul Chryst, they got another guy to be their defensive analyst, and they got the former Denver Broncos and Rams special team coach who has a Super Bowl ring with Denver and the Rams to come be the special teams coordinator. They're making moves.
All right. Hey, I'm not against that. And like I said, I like seeing that. As an Oklahoma fan, you'd be nuts to say that you want Texas to be absolute trash because when we go to the SEC, we want to be representing correctly. I think OU is going to pick up where they left off. I think they're going to improve from last season. I really, really do. That Texas though, man, I just have a hard time talking good about Texas. I just do. That's just my bitter rival. I absolutely hate Texas with everything I love. But I would be remiss if I wouldn't agree with everything you just said, Ty. They have coaching staff. But they've had that before. I have to see it. I just have to see it. Put it on the field, win a Big 12 title, make it to a college football playoff, and go win something. And then I can't say nothing about it. But until then, that's kind of where I'm at with Texas. So, you know what I mean? And I mean, Oklahoma, we had our one bad year. If Oklahoma bounces back this year, they go 11-1, 10-2, the script is going to get flipped because Texas recruits, Oklahoma recruits too. So those are the staples right there. I'm excited about it. I'm ready to get in the SEC, to be completely honest with you, as an OU fan, because to be the best, you got to beat the best. That's just how I feel about it.
Hey,
Yeah.
I got to get off here in a little bit, but Ty, before we get off, man, I kind of want to ask you, and then B, I guess you can follow up on this. How do you feel about the 8-game schedule in the SEC? Were you hoping for a 9-game slate? What are your thoughts on that?
I wanted the 9-game slate.
That's what I was
Look,
wondering.
and I get it. Bama got handed a brutal permanent 3.
Who's that
LSU,
permanent?
Tennessee, and Auburn.
Oh.
Brutal. Like,
That's tough.
and then meanwhile, someone else got like Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and like Missouri. And I'm just like, okay, I don't care about that. You want to know why? Those are great college football games. Those are games that the people will tune in for. And at the end of the day, I'm for that. Here's why I'm not tripping on it. Guys, this is a 1-year Band-Aid. The only reason it's not a 9-game schedule is because ESPN said, no, we're going to compensate you the same amount for playing an extra SEC game. And Greg Sankey and the SEC said, no, you want us to play 9 SEC games. You're going to compensate us for 9 SEC games. ESPN said, no. They said, okay, well, then we'll come back to the negotiating table next year.
So you're saying in 2024, when Oklahoma and Texas get into the league, you're going to see 9 SEC games?
No,
Is that
no,
what
it's
you're
going to be. It's going to be 8 SEC games for the first year, that 2024 year, eliminating conferences. But by 2025, whenever the contract is officially up, because you got to remember, the SEC was, they say they were preparing. They knew. The SEC thought OU and Texas would be over there in 2025, and then it got pushed forward a year. The contract for the SEC restarts with ESPN in 2025. And so that's why they have the 1-year Band-Aid for 2024. And then for the 2025 season, we'll see something different. And all likelihood points to a 9-game season once the contract is renegotiated and all that.
They did my Oklahoma Sooners dirty in their first year. If the projected schedules actually be what it is, though. I don't know if you've seen it. They was talking about, like, we're playing Georgia, Tennessee, and Bama. All 3 of them. That 3 right there alone. And I think LSU was on there as well, Mississippi State, all those teams. So they're basically – but then Texas doesn't have Bama. They don't have Georgia. They don't have any of those teams. I think they had LSU, if I'm not mistaken. Now,
they'll get LSU.
Projected.
Hey,
yeah,
Texas will get LSU.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, absolutely. But looking at that as an OU fan, that's what we're signing up for. You don't go to the SEC. You can't 100%. Be scared of it. Can't be scared. But they were all, Georgia and Alabama were both here in Norman. So
I don't know if you saw Greg Sankey, Corey. He was talking about it, and he was asked, well, what do you say to the fans of the other conferences that say, well, we played a 9-game conference, or like you're scared? He said, I'd turn on the national championship and rewatch it and ask us again if we're scared. And I was like, yo,
ooh, that's a blow. That's a blow. That was a blow.
I was like, yo, Greg Sankey is not taking it.
Hey, that was nice. That was nice, though. How can you argue back to that? You can't.
Yeah, look, I hear you. I want, and Nick Saban is catching a lot of flack for this because, obviously Bama voted against the 9-game schedule. There were 4 teams that voted for it. The majority of the SEC voted against it. Oklahoma and Texas didn't get a vote. But like I said, the vote ultimately came down to the financial aspect of this.
Right.
The SEC is a money league, boys. Like, let's be honest. They want that money, and they're not going to say, oh, you think the SEC is the best conference in college football? You want more SEC football, and you're not going to pay us for it? No. That's not happening. That's just. I don't like it. I'm upset about it, but I do take solace knowing it's a 1-year Band-Aid, or at least I hope it is. That's the plan.
Absolutely. Well, hey,
God, I hope.
Man, what a hell of a show we just had here tonight. Is there anything else I'm missing here? Y'all good? We good with this one?
I think we're good, man.
I think we're good as well. Ty, greatly appreciate you hopping on here with us.
Appreciate you having me on.
This will not be the last time, though, my guy. Here at the House Divided, we're just trying to grow this thing. We're going to keep moving on up from here. So if you guys are still with us an hour and 30 minutes into it and you haven't hit that subscribe button, you have to do it. Tap it. Tap the notification bell. Hit the thumbs up for like. Drop down there in those comments. Good, bad, right, wrong, and different. We don't care one way or another. As always, my name's Brandon. That's my guy, Corey, over there, my partner. And Ty, of course, joined us today. We're going to sign on into this thing tonight. Guys, we signing on out.
Peace.
See ya.